Hello, everybody, and welcome to ReactionLand. I'm your host, John Marshall.
Yes.
If you're new to the channel, please remember to like and subscribe. Go ahead and smack that bell to be notified of future upcoming episodes. Welcome to ReactionLand. My guest today is no stranger to the big screen, little screen, silver screen, and any screen in between.
How dare you?
He is an author and a collector, the one and only Butch Patrick.
Quite an intro, but we forgot with all the t-shirts, the silk screen.
The silk screen, that's right, man. So you've been quite busy most of your life, young man.
Yes, I started at 7 acting and worked in the business till I was about 21 years old, and kind of then got out of it. And was a surfer and was into cars, and obviously a teenager. So we did all the things that teenagers do. And then the Munsters kind of resurfaced in the early 80s when I did Whatever Happened to Eddie for MTV. We decided we wanted to be rock video producers and we needed a project. So we wrote lyrics to the Munsters theme, and we were the first unsigned act ever to be on MTV. And the reason I bring that up is that brought the Munsters back into my life. They had been dormant for about 15 years, and that caused a resurgence with me and Al Lewis and Pat Priest starting to do personal appearances together.
Nice. So the Munsters started in 1964 to 1966. That was the year I was born. As far as I can remember, I always remember growing up with the Munsters, and in the early 70s, a show called Lidsville. It was mid 70s, I believe.
No, it was the summer of 71. You were correct, but the early 70s.
Yes, man, where have the years gone? Probably been keeping it under your bed in the chest, huh?
I've done that, man.
So, what was it like growing up being a child actor in the 60s?
Well, I never really gave it much thought. It came about as just part of my adolescence. It was just something that I did from, like I say, second grade on. I was in and out of the business, and I kept a regular life. I didn't live in Hollywood. I lived down in a city called Gardena, which is about 20 miles south of Hollywood. And we would commute up to interviews and auditions. And, my mom would offer me a lot more than I did. A lot of times I would be busy doing, kid stuff, whether it be football or baseball or mini bike riding. And, but if she could convince me to go on the interview, when I went on them, I had a pretty good batting average as far as, interviews gone on versus jobs secured. So, I just didn't go on as many as I could have. And I think that's what led me to, I was never an actor. I was never a Hollywood kid. I was just someone that had a knack for memorization, and my interpretation of what they were looking for was usually pretty close. And I think that's what got me a lot of jobs, was I just really just acted myself, and they were looking for that regular kid spin that I was.
And that was pretty much a boom of a lot of those shows. Leave It to Beaver. There were a lot of kid shows going on at that time, and the Munsters was a fresh new twist to horror movies, and kind of a parody and a spoof, which was a lot of fun. But almost at the same time, the Addams Family was also born too. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't do a joint episode where the two of you are neighbors or something, or in the same community.
And today that probably would have happened because they're so desperate for trying to find new wrinkles to redo and reboot and cross reference and family feuds, and I mean they're just all over the place trying to figure out a way to maximize the popularity of shows. But yeah, back then they didn't do that. We were pretty much just on Thursday nights, and the Adams were on Friday nights. And the good news about that was whether you preferred one show or the other, you watched them both.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's what makes the Munsters authentic. I don't really think you can reboot Fred Gwynn. Your cast was absolutely outstanding, and they were a perfect match. I've seen a lot of stuff that these guys have tried to rehash out, like even Rob Zombie coming up with his version of the Munsters, and it just doesn't work to me. I mean, I'm expecting Fred to come out of there.
Well, what I tell people, and it's very nice to always have them refer to the original and always say that's the gold standard, and it'll never stop. And it probably won't. You're right, but it's a tribute. What do they say? The highest form of imitation is the highest form of flattery. So,
true.
By having 5 movies redone and a couple series, one animated and one real life, it's nice to have that Munster name out there again. And especially with like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I was kind of joking about the t-shirts, but literally we were like the most heavily merchandised show with us in Star Trek. And then we might even have beat Star Trek. I'm not sure, but it was really close. Now, in the movies level, then you have Star Wars and you have a lot of other things that were bigger. But on the TV level, we were a heavily very successful merchandise show. So you see, even today, people buying Munster stuff. And as far as the Rob Zombie reboot, what I tell people is, you can't compare the Munsters to his and ours, and you can't compare his Munsters to his movies because it's a departure from both of them. You just want to go in and see what he's done, and 57 years later, a spin on it. How did he do it? And he did a very smart thing. He didn't try to duplicate it. He did more of a let's go back and see where the Munsters originated. They originated in Transylvania. Let's see what it was like before they came to America. Let's see how Herman and Lily met. That was his take on it, a love story.
Okay.
He stopped right as Herman got a job. They bought a house. Cousin Lester shows up. End of movie, which leaves a perfect opening for a sequel if he chooses to do it.
Okay. Well, and you approve of that? So I mean, that's pretty good.
It's not for me. I found that, but I'm able not to have. I go in without any baggage and without any expectations, and just for entertainment value. I thought it was. I see where he went with it. I like the colors. I thought it was Tim Burton-esque with the lights and the colors. So yeah, is it the real Munsters? No, of course not. And it wasn't supposed to be. This was exactly what he meant to do, and it wasn't really a copycat situation. It was an interpretation.
So in 1966, when you guys had just wrapped up doing the motion picture, did you have any idea that was going to be the last time that you walked onto the set?
Well, yes and no, but we had no idea how long and how the syndication process would work. But what happened was it was very interesting. The end of the series comes, we do a movie, Munster Go Home, after the series in color to sort of appease everybody and to introduce the show to the world. But in a movie script, I had never ever shot the last scene of the script as the last scene in production. It just usually doesn't work out that way. You usually shoot out of context. But this particular night, at about 10 o'clock at night, it's obviously they've soaped down the streets to simulate snow. We're leaving Munster Hall. We jump in the coach and we drive away, and they go, cut, that's a wrap, goodbye. And it was very surreal because it literally, the timing of it being late night, being the last shot, being the end of us ever getting up and coming to work and seeing each other, it was very, I mean, people weren't really crying, but it was very sort of sad and happy at the same time. It was surreal.
Well, do you think that the characters could have grown any more had they had stayed on in another couple of seasons? And
no, that was probably one of the reasons. It sometimes less is more and is better, and it worked well. Black and white was our genre. Black and white was out, color was in. I think it worked out perfectly that the Leave It to Beaver people had some great scripts and some great ideas for family values, and they transmitted those to the Munster scripts. Universal Studio was the Universal. They did the Monster Studio, so we utilized all their knowledge and sets and set design and all the special effects. So the right place at the right time at the right studio with the right scripts, and then you had a comedy team from Car 54 come west for a few years to bring their magic, and you had a very major movie star drop into television, which wasn't done at that time. So Yvonne DiCarlo, they thought she wouldn't be good for the role. Not only was she good, she brought star power, and she handled the matriarch duties of the household wonderfully.
Oh yeah, no, the cast was definitely gold. Um, so man, that's pretty cut and dry, but that's a really good way of summing it up. So I also want to give you an opportunity to promote your book. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, back in 2013, I was always happily impressed to share my experiences with people that would come to personal appearances about what the Munsters meant to them. That they had fond memories of their childhood watching the show with a favorite uncle or aunt or grandpa or parent or whatever, whoever it was. They always came up with these really great memories of what the show meant to them. And a lot of times it was like, you don't know how important it was for me to watch your show when I wasn't feeling well, or if I was depressed, or I was having a bad day. I mean, it was just, I never really thought about it, but the TV set was a very integral part to people's entertainment and well-being in the 60s. It was like TV Guide came out, people would open it up and they would, pencil in, I'm watching that show, I'm watching that show. They would figure out their whole viewing schedule for the week. And it meant a lot to these people. So these memories, the book is called Munster Memories, and it literally wrote itself. All I did was take their stories and then wrap them around with some people that were involved with the show. Mike Westmore, Bill Mooney, George Barris, a few others, some super collectors to get their spin on it about all their wonderful collections. And I smushed it all together, and it came out 50 years to the day that the Munsters aired, which would have been September 24th, 2014. And that's when it came out. I only made 100 of the big, heavy coffin table books, the hardbound ones. I only made 100 on purpose. And then after that, we went to the paperback version, which is now for sale and has been for 10 years or 8 years.
And can they get that directly from your website or from Amazon? Or
I've got a very difficult to remember website. You may want, your viewers and listeners may want to get a pen and paper out. It's called Munsters.com.
No, I think that's pretty. I'll leave a link to that down below. So you also collect monster cars, is that correct?
I do have a Munster coach and a Dragula, and I also have a Munster chopper. But what happened about, I don't know about, well, I was good friends with George Barris, his entire life. So I did a lot of car related events with George, with me and George, and would go on the road and do stuff. It was wonderful, and I enjoyed it a lot. And being a car guy, being a member of Dead Man's Curve, car club out of New Jersey, I always liked cars. So when I purchased a Munster coach and Dragula replica about 10 years ago, that allowed me a unique wrinkle to go back to the drag strips and do exhibitions and photo ops at the starting line, and parades with the coach. And it gave me a special, unique way to go about traveling around and doing certain things that most people wouldn't be able to do, because the cars were the forefront. And instead of getting on an airplane with a suitcase full of t-shirts and 8x10s, I'm traveling with a 34-foot trailer and a diesel pickup, really hitting the road on the ground, Americana, Route 66, all of those things that I enjoy. But it led to a much different approach to the personal appearance concept. It became more of an event status.
And like in 2004 or 2005, somewhere in there, I live in Central California, near Modesto.
American Graffiti.
American Graffiti, that's right. George Lucas, even. I got to go to a car show in Modesto. I saw this beautiful replica of one of the Munsters cars, and it had the placard on it and everything. Now, I'm wondering if that was just the car that you purchased, or was there more than one?
There's more than one, but the one you probably saw up there was the number 2 coach, because the gentleman that restored it with advanced restorations is out of that area. And it's probably the Barris #2 car.
When you weren't filming, I heard rumors that you would wander around the back lot.
I did. It depends on what time of year. If it was school time, I was in school, because between takes, you'd have to get 3 hours of school in. During the summer, that 3 hours window of school would usually be taken up by more filming when they had episodes that featured Eddie. You know, some of the scripts, whenever you see a script that I'm in a lot, that usually the summer shoot. So, but I would have free time, like sometimes on Monday and Tuesday when we weren't in makeup. The reading day was very short. They would be done by noon. I would still have to go to school, but I would get like an hour break. And at that time on Monday and Tuesday, if I wanted to, I would go explore the Universal Studio. And that sometimes that was the back lot with McHale's Navy. Sometimes I would go up and visit my Uncle John, who supplied horses to the wagon train, Virginian or Laredo. Then there would be other times I would just go wander into a soundstage and see what they were building and try to guess what kind of movies, what was the movie that was going to be coming up. And in about a month's time, you would see this transformation of an entire soundstage into something of a medieval period piece or a Western or a New York street. You never knew what was going to be happening. So it was a wonderful place to just go explore. And I took full advantage of it. Yeah, I had a really very extraordinarily wonderful time, and we were also a very fun show to do. I had been on shows that weren't so much fun. This was a fun shoot, and it was good times. Yeah, was the makeup a pain? Sometimes, you bet. Was it rough sometimes? Yeah, but not very often. And it was usually, we would look forward to the Munster coach coming to play, because that would get us outside. We did a few specials. For me, Mike Westmore was my makeup man, who went on to win Oscars for, Mask, and he did all the stuff for Star Trek: The Next Generation. We're still friends. He did a segment in my book, but I would be able to go to the lab and go up and see what he was up to. I mean, I really was really blessed to have a wonderful window of opportunity. And I went out to Universal, worked a little bit after that occasionally, but that was my big window of opportunity to really take advantage. I was, literally 11 and almost 13 when it was over. So those are really good years to be a kid with access to some fun stuff.
Sid and Marty Krofft had a slew of hits back in the day, of course. How many episodes of the Munsters did you actually were you in?
70. I was in all of them. We did 70.
70. Okay, that's great to know. Lidsville had what? One season or two?
What they did is we did 11 weeks. We did 17 episodes in 11 weeks. And then what they did is they reran each episode 6 times for a total of 2 years. And then when it went off that, I think we were on NBC first, and then it went off the air, and then ABC bought it and then did the same 2-year run. So it was literally on for 4 solid years from 11 weeks.
You worked with Billy Hayes and Charles Nelson Riley. These are living legends in my book.
Yeah.
What was it like to work with them?
Pretty much Jeannie, Weenie Jeannie. Billy Hayes was wonderful. She was really the glue that held the show together. Her and Sharon Baird, who was Raunchy Rabbit, because they had all been working together with the Crofts. What I found most enjoyable about the shoot was a lot of the little people in the hats were friends of mine, because when you're a kid growing up in Hollywood, they don't have kids be kid stand-ins. They have little people. So a lot of the little people had worked with me as my stand-in or my stunt double. So that was kind of neat, that even though you never saw their faces, when they took their lids off, those were friends of mine. So that made it fun. And then Sharon Baird and I became really, really good friends, because we had so many common friends. She was a Mouseketeer, and Don Grady and Paul Peterson, and all these people that I knew from Hollywood were Mouseketeers. Plus, I had done a lot of Disney work, so that worked out well. Charles Nelson Riley, that was kind of an interesting dynamic there, because he was just so over the top. He was wonderful in the part. He really enjoyed it, but he was very unhappy with the makeup and everything went along with it. So he had his good days and his bad days, but he did that part well. I can't imagine anybody else doing it.
No, he definitely had a flamboyant way about him, and
Yep.
If he could have got that ascot in on that character, he would have. I'm telling you.
The the match game, yeah, or the big glasses.
Yes. So you mentioned Sharon Beard. Did you how many of the other Mouseketeers did you know? Cheryl Holdridge, did you know Cheryl?
No,
I
Doreen
adored her. Oh,
and Paul and Don, and that was about the extent of it. Now, I've seen a few others on the circuit. Occasionally, you will have promoters that will bring in special event reunion scenarios, and when that happens, the Mouseketeers was always a fun thing. And I watched them. I grew up I was born in '53, so in the mid '50s, I'm watching this stuff firsthand. This was my go-to television programming. Spin and Marty and Captain Kangaroo and all that great old stuff. And I mean, I love that. I grew up in the best time in the world. I had a chance to see a little bit of the '50s and work all through the '60s and the '70s, and it was a wonderful time.
I think those were probably the best of times right there. I mean, a simpler time, no internet and none of that crazy crap that the youngsters lose their mind over now. But what a difference in time. Did you ever think the Munsters would stand the test of time like it has? I mean, because it's probably, to me, just as good now as they were then.
Bigger. They're actually bigger. It's funny. It really is a phenomenon. You call it a perfect storm or whatever, but there's certain situations in the '60s, and the '60s is a decade that not only for pop culture, but literally for humanity. I mean, it's taught in colleges. The '60s, you had the social upheaval, you had civil rights, you had the Vietnam, you had so much going on, good and bad, that it was so memorable and so instrumental in in mankind and where it went. That it was interesting to be part of it. I mean, the Beatles, for gosh sakes, the music, we're still listening to it. The movies, it was a wonderful time. And I mean, I'll give you an example. In 1969, I got my driver's license. I got my first girlfriend. They landed on the moon. My girlfriend lived in Laurel Canyon. Charlie Manson was running around her backyard. I mean, it was crazy, weird times to be growing up and going through your adolescence and early teenhood.
Yeah, there were some good times and some crazy times there with the Manson family. Woo!
Yeah, I mean, I did a movie for Chuck Jones in '68, '67, and '68. Did the Monkees in '67. Best guest star role of my life for that week. I got to work with the guys. Still friends with them, or Mickey at least, when they've all passed away. But the same year, I went up to Haight-Ashbury in Frisco with Chuck Jones to do the Phantom Tollbooth movie, which is an animated classic Norman Juster movie. So I'm spending time at the corner of Haight-Ashbury in 1968. You cannot get more ground zero than psychedelic music and the Grateful Dead and the Jefferson Airplane than that. After Lidsville, Metro Media Records let Bobby Sherman go, and they decided they needed a replacement teeny bop star. And I was the lucky recipient of their focus. We attempted to do that. I did American Bandstand, but I'll leave it at this. I'll just say I was the original Munster Manili, and it wasn't. And they knew up front, and I told them up front, I don't sing. I mean, this is going to be very difficult for you to do this, but I don't sing. And they go, no problem, we can fix it. And I said, all right, I'll give it a go. Everybody should play rock star for a year. It was fun.
Yeah, a lot of them got started doing that, man. That's all good, brother. Butch, I know you gotta go, and thank you so much for being on the show. I would love to have you back on at some time and catch up with you again, and just keep in
I'll
touch
tell you
with
what, I'll
you.
sign off on when I come back. I'll tell you the story about how I turned down George Lucas's part in American Graffiti because I didn't want to cut my hair.
Oh, that sounds great, Butch. God bless you, and we'll talk
Take
to you soon, bro. What a fun episode today was. Butch Patrick, what can I say, man? I am so blessed to have had Butch Patrick on the show today, and I'm so grateful. Not too many people from his cast are actually still living, so I mean, it's an emotional thing for me because I grew up watching him as a kid, and the memories are all implanted. The the groovy surfer theme, and definitely an honor and my pleasure to have such a living legend on my show sharing his stories. And I thank you, the viewer, who hopefully stayed throughout the whole entire interview. It was so much fun. Well, folks, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm John Marshall. Till the very next time that we meet, God bless you.
I hate you.
That's the sweetest word you ever said. And you won't slap me?
Who said I wouldn't?